Hello, fellow translators. So here is a sort of different type of video. This will be a one-on-one, a conversation, an interview with Philippe of Translators Tech Corner. And he has his own YouTube channel, which I will link to down below. And as the name says, it deals with translators tech. And a specific thing that we're going to be dealing with today is precisely CAT tools. My channel has been lacking quite a bit in CAT tools because it's really not my area of expertise. I've had some experience, some not too good experience with CAT tools. And so I'm really not the best person to talk to about CAT tools, especially when you get down to the nitty gritty and when you want to talk about the details and also keeping up with what's been going on with CAT tools. So here we're going to talk with Philippe, who is the right person to talk to about CAT tools. And so let's get into it. And I know I posted a video before where I asked if you guys had any questions, and some of you did. So we'll get to your questions. They'll probably be answered during our talk, but if not, we'll get to them at the end of our conversation. But otherwise, Philippe, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Robert.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to this. I think it's something that I'll be able to learn a lot as well, probably.
I'll do my best.
So let's start off just very generally, very broadly. If translators are first starting out, they're bound to hear about CAT tools at some point. What's the first thing, if they hear CAT tool and they're not even sure what it stands for, or, and then they're very curious, what's the first thing they should do? Should they, Google it, or should they, try to buy one and play with it a bit? Or, how should they go about learning what a CAT tool is in the first place?
Yeah, so like you said, the first thing you have to understand what is a CAT tool. There are many type of softwares and ads that someone can use to enhance their translation. But that does not mean these tools are CAT tools. A CAT tool is basically a software that is based on the use of translation memory. So if that's not based on translation memory, it's not a CAT tool. It can be a translation aid, but it's not a CAT tool. So if you don't know what a translation memory is, I have a super fast video, less than 1 minute on my channel if you want to check that out. But basically, it keeps track of what you've been translating, and it helps you to refer back to it. So it helps you to save time, and it helps you to translate more consistently, or it helps you to translate with other colleagues, or coming back after what somebody has already translated. So that enables that kind of work. The thing is, buying directly a CAT tool, we'll go that in some of your questions, I think, later on, but may not necessarily be the best idea. You need to see what your context is. To learn about CAT tools, there are actually a few ways to do that. Folks that they can check YouTube channels. There are several demonstrations of how CAT tools are used on YouTube. Many videos in different languages as well. I think there's quite a bit of them in Spanish, some in Brazilian Portuguese, and there's like many. So you can start of sort browse that to have an idea of how it works. Because going into a CAT tool for the first time, you'll see all these buttons, all these menus, and you're not necessarily understanding what they do. And so you don't know where you're going. So that may be a bad experience. So maybe first, check out some of these videos. If you are already on Pros, if you're a paid member on Pros, I think it's the Plus subscription, you can see past training videos, and that's included in the Plus membership. So there's no new videos that are free for Plus members, but past videos are. So the way CAT tools are used has not changed that much. So folks that have that kind of membership, they can check back on these trainings, and they are quite good. People that have made trainings there on CAT are quite good. So that will explain how it works. And then once you have that idea and what you're looking for and what's the process, then you can, get your hands dirty and get stuck in and see how it works for yourself.
Okay, perfect. And I'll also link to the super short video you said that you have on translation memory,
Right.
because I think that that'll be useful as well. I'll link to it in the description below. And so what are some of the main CAT tools that people will come across? What are the main ones out there?
Well, the big names will be Trados, which is sort of changing name every every once in a while. So it was SDL Trados, it's now LWS Trados Studio, something like that. Then there's MemoQ, WordFast Pro, and Cafetran, which will be the big desktop names for paid CAT tools. You have free CAT tools as well. So some are web-based, like WordFast Anywhere or SmartCat. And then you have a free desktop tool, which is Omega T, that is cross-platform as well.
Right. And so that transitions nicely into my next question, which is it worth starting with some of these free CAT tools first and then going into paid ones? Or do you think it's worth it to pay for a CAT tool right away?
That will depend very much on your source of income. So if you're translating a sort of informal work, so people are giving you work, start with a free CAT tool, because you can adapt to that and see what works for you, and you get to learn what is a CAT tool. You build up your translation memory, and then once you know what you need, you can start with paid CAT tools and migrate your translation memories and your glossaries there if you want. Then you have the situation where you will be working for a translation agency. And then there's like two situations. One is translation agency has a big translators base, and some of them, they have prepaid licenses keys. So for example, they will give you a job and you will have a key to use the CAT tool for that specific job. So you're not paying for the CAT tool. You just have, if that's a desktop one, you have to install it on your computer, use that key. Usually they're quite good because they will give you sort of a PDF manual on how to do that. So you're good to go. Some of them do the same thing, but via a web portal. So you will go into their platform and that's already paid for. So you're not paying to use the tool. So you don't need to do anything if that's your case. So you just get stuck in, learn how to use the tool and translate that way. Then you have the situation, which is quite frequent, where people are an agency and they will send you a project package that has been created by a CAT tool. So for example, say Trados, and in that package, you will have the files to translate, the translation memory if it already exists, some glossaries, some information, etc., etc. And that has to be ingested in a CAT tool that is able to accept it. So usually, if that's that, if you don't want to run into problems, it's better to use the same CAT tools as they do, especially if you are going to stick with that translation agency. So it's like, they offer you a lot of work and you'll be doing frequent work for them. Well, you know, that might be worth investing in the CAT tool. Anyway, all CAT tools have like 30 days to 45 days free, trial. So you can, start with that and see if you like it. Then if you're more techie, then you can choose what you want and try to see if you can adapt what is sent to you to the CAT tool you're using. That depends on your abilities. Like,
okay, are certain CAT tools more useful for certain specialization? So, or actually, let me ask more broadly: are CAT tools more useful for certain specializations than others in general? So, if I'm a literary translator versus I translate engineering manuals, I assume I'll look at CAT tools in a very different way. And are there certain specializations that will find more use from CAT tools than others? Like in this example, would someone who does engineering translations, they would find more use from CAT tools than a literary translator. And like what other specializations do you think could benefit more or less from CAT tools?
Yeah, that's right. It's a good way to bring it up. Once you understand what a CAT tool does, a CAT tool will actually store what you've translated, and it helps you with similar content. So if you have text that will have a lot of repetitions or sentences that are sort of used many times, or some section of the sentence will be the same across the document, a CAT tool will be extremely useful. Also for glossaries. I mean, we can access glossaries in different ways. Some people just do Excel glossaries, or there's that. You can do it that way. But in a CAT tool, you can have like all the variations of a word, and you get fast insertion. So it's like if you type 1 or 2 of the first characters of the word, then you can just type enter, and it will, go there. So you avoid like getting the wrong term or typos. So that helps with that. So for example, like you said, if you're with an engineering manual, yeah, you will have some specific terms, and you want to use those, especially when there are like mission critical terms, or if you're translating terms for a medical device, or some sort of a medical procedure that will be done, and you're talking to surgeons and things like that. So that needs, the terminology needs to be spot on. So CAT Tools good for that. If you're translating a book that somebody has written, and it's like, there's like X amount of pages and it's vast, and it's likely it won't be very repetitive. So you probably don't need a CAT tool for this. What you need for this is good writing skills, because translating a book, it needs to be a nice read. So that's where writing skills comes in. And so if you're translating that, knowing, the cultural context to your audience, and the expressions that would apply, so that it will talk to them. So it's more like your own skills that will be on the forefront for that, rather than using some technology to help.
Okay. And I mean, so it seems like, and at least the impression, the more technical you get, maybe the more there's a need for CAT tool, or is that too generalized, do you think?
You mean technical content?
Yes.
That you're translating?
Yes.
I guess so. Yeah. And
Okay.
it's very seldom that you will be given translation work for technical stuff, especially if that's big names. Any big company, you will be asked through an agency that is using CAT tools. Some of them will be using custom translation, custom machine translation, or things like that. And right, you will have to plug into either their own system or your own CAT tool to translate that. It's very unlikely that you'll be served a translation for to be done in that kind of technical environment. And not be asked to use a CAT tool.
CAT tool. Okay, and which brings me to my next question: is, are there certain CAT tools that are better for certain specializations? Like, is Trados better for engineering while MemoQ is better for IT, or does it not depend on that? It depends on the glossary and and stuff like that. In your opinion?
It won't depend on exactly on the type of content, more like on how the document is built. If that makes sense, because when you this question will, you need sort of granular understanding of what each CAT tool from a different name does and how it works, to be able to see differences. So I've talked with people that see differences, but I mean, they have a deep understanding of what CAT tool can do, and the differences that they find when they're using a CAT against another one. So to be able to feel the difference and then make an informed choice on that, you need to be quite well versed in CAT tools. Basically, the main differences that you will feel is like, if you need a lot of flexibility, and you need to be able to adapt to some technical nitty-gritty that an agency will ask you. They will ask you to do something special on the document, or do some specific stuff on the translation. Maybe SDL will be good for that because they have like an app store, and you can add any specific thing you want on it from the App Store. Many things are free and some are paid, but it's easy to add and remove stuff from SDL. SDL is there's very much very many options for technical nitty-gritty things that you can, many buttons
yeah.
that you can configure. So it's good for that. If you need something that is visual, you need a decluttered sort of workspace, and you need to be able to see visually what your file will look like in the end, or how the language expansion will affect how the page will be set up, you know, when you have your text box with your graphs, and if it goes to the next page in some weird place, and you know, WordFast is good for that. So you can get that visual impression. You can do a pre-translation test with to be able to evaluate the language expansion. So that's good for that. And MemoQ, it's good as well because you have a lot of flexibility on MemoQ. And if you want to use translation aid, like for example, machine translation, but the language pair that you're using, most machine translations are absolutely rubbish at giving you suggestions. MemoQ can be good because if you have a good enough translation memory, it sort of patches translation from what's been done in the past in sort of a smart way and presents it to you. So that can help in that sense. But you need to have some experience in the CAT tools to be able to see a difference, really.
Okay, but that's super interesting that yeah, how you mentioned at least broadly, generally the differences between those main CAT tools, and you kind of answered my next question already by doing so. I was going to ask you what your most highly recommended CAT tool is, and you show the differences there. But is there one that you more highly recommend than others?
There's one that I enjoy, and it's been the case for many years, and it's a free CAT tool. It's WordFast Anywhere.
Okay.
So it's web-based, and I find anything that I want to do, I can do, and I like the stability of it. It's like every time it gets an update, or it's very seldomly broken. Because sometimes when you update software that's on your desktop, then you find that since the latest update, some stuff is not working, just like it happened with Windows 10. And you know, when you get an update, stuff doesn't work the way it was in the past. And no, so WordFast Anywhere is very stable in that sense, and it enables you to connect to many machine translations. Now it's already a TMS, translation management system. So if you're a team of translators and you want to feed work to people and keep track of expenses, you can do that. And there's very much a lot of things that you can do with your translation memories in WordFast Anywhere. This, like, if you want to be able to work on translation memories, if they're not excessively big, like under 100,000 translation units, you can do many things on them. If you want to filter them out, clean them out, there's a lot you can do. So that's my go-to.
Okay, and again, you're sort of one step ahead of me with all the questions I'm going to ask. But in terms of what should people keep in mind when they're deciding what CAT tools to use? Because actually, and you mentioned the differences between the CAT tools, but you said you have to kind of be sort of an expert in them to spot the differences. And so if I'm not an expert and I'm first starting out, what should I be looking for in a CAT tool? You know, let's say the company hasn't told me which CAT tool they're using, for regular work or anything, so I have to pick myself. What are some ways I could do that?
All right. Well, then you can start with one CAT tool that you like. Sometimes it's a question of look as well, where the menus are, where the buttons are, because that's a work tool. So you really have to look at it that way. It's a work tool. So say if you're a carpenter, there's that tool that would feel well in your hand, and maybe you're doing that type of cabinets and you're not doing benches, and so you need a set of tools for a specific job and not for another one. So it's look at it that way. CAT tools are tools, and they will help you to translate. They will help you to translate faster, more accurately, and so that's what you're looking for. If you're translating for specific agencies, or if you have some ways of handling your file system, and there are things that will feel better to you. So maybe start with one that all of them you can get like a free period to test them out. So you work with one on a project, you work with another one, and then after a while you'll see what you like, what you don't like. Sometimes when things break, the experience with the support team will be important to some. So it's that kind of things. If there's nothing for you that is imposed on you by a translation agency, just shop around, try to see what works for you best. And some of them are free. Then you have some people, they trust what's on the web, so they won't have a problem with using a cloud-based translation system. Some people will feel there's like a danger, or they're very mindful about their data, so they want something that's desktop-based, so they will use that. And then you have people that are translators but are not very good with technology, so they'll be looking for a solution that's easy for them and that works. And some people are very good with technology, and so they will be looking at their wallet and they're like, oh man, I can do that with Omega T. So I'm installing Omega T, and but then you need to be some sort of techie. You will have to, if people give you a project package, then you will have to hack into it, to be able to extract the file to translate, convert the translation memory to the format you'll be using, and that kind of stuff. So depends on your background as well, how well you handle technology.
Oh, okay. And I have to say, just as a comment there, I don't consider myself a techie, but I know one of the few ones that I used for a bit was Omega T, and I used it. In fact, I remember one client said they needed Trados, but they needed the TMX files, which I knew I could do with, I think it was the TMX files that I could do with Omega T. And so I just mentioned that, and I was able to do the job. But yeah, I didn't have to. I mean, they sent me the stuff. I didn't have to hack into get the terminology or anything. But yeah, and actually that brings me to my next thing, which has always been a concern for me. Like, what is the difference between web-based and tools and once you download? And I'm speaking, I say this as a Mac user, because I know for Mac users we've been affected by that. So yeah.
Yeah, if you're a Mac user, if you don't have a problem with using web-based CAT tools, that's a good bet. It's a good way to work, because with the problem with Mac is that they're changing the system so that you buy a new Mac. So yeah. Every time that's how it works. So every time there's a change, then you've got all the companies, and that's true not only for CAT, but anybody that makes software that will run on a Mac. Every time there's like a major update or a change in the chip or some things like that, they will have to adapt. Sometimes it's minor changes, and sometimes it's major changes, and sometimes there's stuff that will just break. Some part of the tool will work and some part won't, and then you have the developers that are like running crazy to sort of catch up with the change that happened on Mac. So eventually they always work on Mac, the CAT tools that are made to work also on Mac, for example, like WordFast, Cafetran, that sort of things. I think Omega T works as well. and
You know,
they catch up.
okay. Yeah.
And they do work. But when you are at that moment of change, you may experience some stuff that is working weird. And if you're using a web-based CAT tool, you won't feel the difference, because anyway, you're using the CAT tool in your browser. So there's no problem. Then you choose the type of browser you want to use with that. Browsers now have plugins for correcting grammar and that stuff. So you have live sort of grammar check as you're working. The main difference you will find on Mac is if you're using keyboard shortcuts. You may want to change some of the mapping of those in the settings of your CAT tool, so that it does adapt well to the keyboard layout and on Mac. But that's if you're using keyboard shortcuts.
Okay, interesting. And yeah, and I guess what you say is right, because of these updates. That's because I've had issues with CAT tools, and I know that other Mac users, at least we've complained about the issues with each other. And but it makes sense. It must be, yeah, those updates, they're hard to keep up with, you know, when Mac keeps trying to do these updates, trying to get people to get new versions. But yeah, and so that was my impression as well, like you said. So I guess the web-based CAT tools, it doesn't matter if you have a Mac or a PC or anything.
Oh yeah,
by and large,
I mean,
okay.
You can work on an iPad or an Android tablet on them. It's like it's just the same.
Yeah.
It doesn't make a difference at all.
Okay.
No problem with that. If you trust the cloud, because I know some translators, once you mention, you know, cloud-based CAT tool, they'll go like, no.
Oh, really?
So
okay.
If you're okay with that, then that's fine. Usually there's no problem with that. The data is safe there. But if that's a concern, or I mean, if you're translating James Bond stuff, real world James Bond, you know, maybe don't put it there.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to keep in mind. So if I'm interested in purchasing, say, Trados, but it's quite, the price tag is quite high. Is there a cheaper way to purchase it?
There are many ways to lower down that price. First, you need to see where you are in the world. If you're located in a country where money is very scarce, some translation CAT tools vendors, they will have a representative in there, and they will have some custom ways of paying. So sometimes I know for Trados, you can pay, for example, monthly or in installments, depending on the countries you're living in. So the way of knowing that, what I would suggest is for folks that want a discount, go and get the free trial. That will register you with your name, your email and stuff. That means you will get a zillion emails coming to your mailbox, depending on the CAT tool company. If that's WordFast, it's very seldom you'll get an email. If that's MemoQ, they're sort of okay. If that's Trados, you will get 2-3 emails a week at least. But in one of these emails, one of these will be from the actual representative in your country. And so that's good. Just keep the name around. And if you have questions, ask them, because they will tell you what are the, you know, sort of the ways of paying cheaper in the country where you are. And if you can wait till the moment you have the hot sales. And I've seen sometimes sales going up to more than 50% off. So that's substantial. That's substantial. Okay, yeah. So, you know, check your emails. There's that. If you can wait longer on pros, there are translators group buys. So where they buy in bulk, and that lowers the price. So you get on the sale and you wait till it reaches the amount of people buying that they require. So sometimes it's like 20 or something like that. So when you have 20 buyers, then that's good. You will pay the money and you will get your cheaper discount. And, you know, look for season sales as well happen, so you can buy in that moment. If you need to buy immediately, well, you will have to cope with the price that's happening at that moment in time. And but if you can wait, anyway, get the free trial. That's the way to get into the tool, to get the feel of it, and then see if you really want to buy that one. And then maybe a discount will come to your mailbox, or just go back to the website and see if there's something happening, and then you can get your discount that way.
So I have one question left, which is some issues and problems I have with CAT Tool. But if that's okay, before I get to that, I quickly wanted to get to some, because like I mentioned, I asked my channel for some questions about CAT tools in general. And so I was wondering if you could address these in particular. And I'll go through them one by one, and we'll see what you have to say about them before we get into to my complaints. Wait here, let's see. So I have a couple questions. The first one is by Lien. Says, I'm starting out as a freelance translator and I'm planning to get MemoQ. Is that a good idea, or should I go for Trados instead? I learned to work with both in college.
Well, that depends. I mean, if you check all of the above that we discussed in the video, that should help you to make a decision. Look at pricing and look at the environment that you like. If you're not super techy, but you want some adaptability, maybe MemoQ is better for you. But if you want to have great adaptability, and then, you know, just go Trados. Okay,
and yeah, that's true.
Both are good. Both are
okay.
Good. Yeah, no issue about that. Both are good.
Yeah, and yeah, like you mentioned, you go more into depth previously in the discussion, so check that out. And perfect. And the next question is by Fcm Tutorials and Insights. Or sorry, he just says, looking forward to it. The interview will certainly help many of us. So hopefully it does.
Yeah.
The next question, do you know that STL Trados has limitations when it comes to writing Amharic characters? This sounds very specialized, but yeah.
Amharic is a very tough language.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. Yeah. It's and you will find that many CAT tools have issues, and sometimes languages that write from right to left, you will find some situations. And then there are settings that you can change in your CAT tool to help it behave better with that type of languages. So if you have that issue, maybe just contact the hotline and explain them what you're doing and what issue you are facing. And usually these are issues or sort of setting up things that are more difficult to do because they are more like there's less people using it, or because it's just hard. And usually hotline, they will have an answer for you, and they will tell you, well, try this and try that and change those settings, and or we are aware of the problem, we're working on it, if that's really something that's an issue in the programming of the tool. But usually there are things you can do to make your life easier, and they will point you to a solution. And sometimes some solution will be outside of the realm of that CAT tool. So maybe they'll tell you, well, maybe if you do something to the file with that third-party thing, that will help you, you know. So
okay. Yeah. Okay, yeah, perfect. And the next question is, and that was by Translook, by the way. The next question is by Girl on Venus. Can you please do more videos on CAT tools and learn how to use them? Well, here you go. Your wish is granted. And once again, I'll link to it below. But if you want to go even more in depth, please do check out Philippe's channel, because that's what he does. And then the last question I have is by Rondi. How come across is even a thing? What kind of appeals to this torture tool offer that agencies actually end up using it? So he's not happy with across, basically. Let's keep it that way. And so I guess that's all he has to say about that.
Don't use Acros if you don't like it.
Yeah, I guess. But, and,
yeah,
and he's
there's some
saying
weird agencies. Yeah.
Yeah, that is like he's saying, why do agencies why would they want to use Across?
But you shouldn't be forced to use Acros. I mean, if they send you an XLIF, which is the file format where you have it's ready for translation, any CAT tool should be able to accept an XLIF. So have them export that. Same for the translation memory. You mentioned earlier on, like the TMX format, which is the standard format for translation memory. Have them export that to TMX. If they send you an XLIF, and if they send you a TMX, you're good to go to work with any CAT tool you like. I mean, you just import both and you're good to go.
Okay. So there you go. And so that leads with my last question, which is a complaint that I've had before about CAT tools, and that I've mentioned before. And it's not so much the CAT tool per se, because CAT tools are great when they're used well, but it's the way they're used sometimes by agencies, and when they will, run through the text ahead of time and say, we will pay you, for per word, but if we already have a match, we'll pay you, 0 for 100% match, or we'll pay you X percentage for 90% match, et cetera, et cetera. And so translators end up getting paid a lot less, even though they still have to, I mean, they might not even be working with a CAT tool. And even if they do, there are issues with compatibility, or maybe, they still have to go through all of the terminology sometimes. And so I guess my question to you would just be like, have you come across this, or do you think there's a way of dealing with this, or do you think it's not really an issue and it can be dealt with, I guess?
Yeah, so I'll just start by explaining what happens with that, because some people will not understand what those type of pricing policies are based on. In any CAT tool, you can use a translation memory, and you can analyze the document against the translation memory. So the CAT tool will try to see if the new sentences that are in the document have been translated before and are in the translation memory. And some will be 100% match. So let's say, I don't know, if you get to documents that have a summary, well, the word summary will be on one line, it will be one segment, and most likely it is in the translation memory, so it will be called a 100% match. And they don't want to pay you because they think it's already translated, so they just want you to check to see if that's fine, and they will pay you like 1 cent for that, for example. And then you have sentences that will look like others, and they will have like 70% match, which means 70% of the sentence exists in a segment in the translation memory. And so they will pay you X amount for these, and for those the segments that do not exist in the translation memory, they will pay you the full price. That depends a lot, because if you get a file that so maybe a way for you to do that is ask them to send you the file populated, I mean, pre-translated with MT, with translation memory, with TM, pre-translated with TM, and leaving, blank space, or copying the source to the target for the other ones. So you will see how many are there and what's that compared to the rest of the document. So if you've got like the document that has like, I don't know, 100 pages, and they ask you to translate just like a couple of new words, you will be spending a lot of time navigating to go to these new segments. And you're supposed as a translator to check what has been done in the past to see if it's right. So you'll be checking like X amount of segments, and that will cost you a lot of time, even though these have been already translated.
Right.
So for that kind of jobs, ask an hourly rate. That's the best. If the problem is, if you need work, you'll accept it. So that's the trouble. But if more translators say, I have looked at the file. I know how long it will take me to cover this. Here is my hourly rate. Please accept it.
Yeah.
You know, and you do the work. And if it's well done, they'll be happy. If they're just greedy and want you to work cheap, well, just pass them on, because anyway, that'll be only trouble. But then again, if you really need the work, you know, that there's that as well. And the same rule applies to what is pre-translated by MT. And you've touched on that on your channel as well.
Yes.
And it's like some people, they will just pre-translate with MT, with a rubbish generic MT online. Some of them are good, but then it depends on your language pair. If you're doing Amharic to German, for example, it's unlikely the machine translation will be good. So if they send you something that is pre-translated, you will basically have to put everything in the bin and translate it from scratch. So charging hourly rate helps with that kind of work. Right. I've sometimes had to talk with agencies and tell them, well, look, translation job that has been done on this is absolutely horrendous. So I'm starting from scratch. And here is how many hours I will have to spend on this. And so that'll be that. Are you okay? And they're like, yeah, sure. All right. So if they want it to be done well for the customer, then they'll eat the difference in price. And next time they won't use that translation memory, or they won't use that machine translation, or they won't use that translator.
Yeah.
That's no good.
Yeah. No, and actually, yeah, that's a good idea, because usually I tell translators not to work per hour if they can, but actually this is a good moment when it's probably good to work per hour. Yeah, just because of this situation. So yeah, thank you very much. That's all I had to say, and all I had to ask, at least for now. And so hopefully all of you found this very useful. And if you want any more details, please check out Philippe's channel, where he does talk a lot more, because there's a lot more to say about CAT tools and about the tech in general. And I've seen he delves deep into it. As you can see, he really knows his stuff. I will link to his channel here below, and I'll also link to that short video where he talks about TM. Because I think that'll be quite useful for many of you as well. And otherwise, thank you once again for joining and for talking to me today, Philippe. And
thank you for hosting me.
And yeah, and so take care, and I will see all of you next time.